Thomas, you state counseling is impossible since the psychopathic spouse is a compulsive liar who will use these sessions to learn how to manipulate you more effectively. And I would definitely tend to agree with that. But in this case, would individual counseling assist the spouse living with a psychopath? And by this I mean not to encourage the spouse to live with a psychopath, but to perhaps even open up the spouse's perception that they are living with a psychopath, and maybe that's why there are problems. If so, what particular training or approach would you look for in a counselor to help someone cope with a psychopathic spouse? And are there any groups, such as Al-Anon, like Psychopath-Anon, that help people sort of recognize that the person having problems in their life is a psychopath, and how to handle them and what to do about them?
Well, right now, there's nothing like Al-Anon, but I can definitely see that coming down the road, as this, it's becoming a big issue now, and you will see. Most of the people who write to me after reading the book, a lot of them are counselors who said, "Thank you, give me something I can actually work with here." And the same reason, they don't get any training with this stuff either, so it's just much shock to them. So that's good. There's actually going to be a change. It's coming down the road. I can feel it. Like I can see the roots of that happening, and you will have someone eventually in time. Like everything else, it takes money. So somebody in time will eventually begin a foundation or something, or set up something like a hotline, would be great, like the Samaritans, or that kind of a thing where the people can call and get like help and information on the phone to deal with this, and that would be a gigantic step forward. And I can definitely see that coming, definitely. The momentum is happening and moving towards this, and then we have a whole different ball game. Then, that's one of the reasons I make the YouTube videos, and I keep them as simple as possible, and I present myself as just how in my garage as a regular fella, just to show that like this is a real down to earth issue, and this is very important too, because it affects normal people, what we call normal people, and. It's a great comfort to people to know that they're not alone, because a lot of people would be in a relationship with a psychopath and would just think that there was something so wrong here, but I can't put my finger on it. And that's why, again, knowledge is power. But yeah, I'm actually quite positive and hopeful that things in terms of counseling and support groups, I'm talking about like, real groups, not internet groups, is coming down the road. So we're definitely on the cusp of a big change in that, in terms of that. Right now it's a bit bleak, but I can see that that's going to end soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Herm. Up next we have Green Meadow.
Hi again. You described psychopaths as parasites, and if we follow nature, an overinfestation of parasites creates an imbalance in the system. Right now we're seeing a tremendous imbalance politically and economically. It would seem that this would force the psychopaths in power to respond to that imbalance. What kind of behavior do you think this will trigger, and what kind of actions do you think they might take?
Well, it's funny because, fundamentally, I used to think about this a lot. And, what's happening right now is they're trying to put a lockdown on the global awakening. It's almost like a race to the finish. Every time more and more people wake up to the control system, the psychopaths introduce new laws to try and muffle it. And they also try to change the culture. They encourage journalists to make fun of people who they would call them conspiracy. They turn the word conspiracy theory into a joke. Like they act like conspiracies don't exist. Like Julius Caesar, he accidentally fell on Brutus's sword. That day in the Senate. And this is how they're doing it. They're changing the culture constantly, and they're changing the laws constantly to try and muffle this global awakening that's happening. And that shows how desperate they are. Now, psychopaths are fundamentally lazy. This is a very important thing that people have to learn. They only invest enough energy in something as long as they can get away with it. And as soon as it becomes too much trouble, they give in. And that's also why I'm quite hopeful, even though it seems things are dark now with the totalitarian measures that are being put in there. I do believe there is a point will come where they'll give up. They'll just say, the hell with it, and they'll go back to whatever they're really interested in, like banking or whatever, and stuff like that, or just making money through corporations, because that's what's happening right now. It's a race to the top, actually. And what's happening is the awakening people are starting to move forward ahead of them, and they know it. But a critical point will come where they'll, just like all psychopaths, they'll throw in the towel and just go somewhere else. So that's why it's very important for the likes of your radio station and all the other ones to keep spreading this knowledge that the world is not how the TV news tells us it is. Because the more people we can wake up like that, and the more people we can get out of their complacency and start thinking about themselves and how the world really is, the quicker we're going to have the psychopaths in charge throw in the towel and forget about it. They're not going to do something like start a big, huge, major nuclear war or anything like that. They won't do that, because that'll mean that at the end of them. You see, they always think in terms of like opportunity and business and what they can actually get. And, you know, a major global war is not going to be any good for them. And they'll also find that their totalitarian measures, they'll start doing things like damaging their business, you know, and the money they make, and they'll stop it. It's little things like that. And, I'm hopeful that at some point in the future, the human race will actually transcend the political system we have right now, and then they're finished.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm seeing glimpses of that. So, and my next question is that you think that the psychopaths have an end game where they want to depopulate the planet and makes humans hate themselves, and if they cover this up with environmentalism and other memes, do you think the plan is starting to break down, or are they successful so far?
Well, I 100% agree with you. The whole population reduction thing is based on getting people to hate themselves. That's why they want to we are the ones who destroy the planet. This whole thing they put into people's heads. Absolutely bang on 100% with you there. That's a very sinister thing they're doing. The psychopaths in charge think there's too many of us, and we're getting too expensive to them. And also, the more there is of us, the less valuable their money is. You know, there's less, the less power they have. They don't have all the money. So this is what they're all driven by. They all ultimately want to be God. Now, that's another thing that will happen. They'll all turn on each other eventually too. Now, where was I? We're talking about like the population reduction thing. Yes, that's absolutely on the cards. Because they don't have any value for human beings, because they don't see themselves as human beings. They see themselves as some kind of like God, you know, an elite and a superior being. So therefore, they see no value in us. They see no value in our emotions, in our feelings, in our morality, in our ethos, in our pathos, and every aspect of us. And so we're just another unit to be disposed. This is also what the transhumanist movement is about as well. Transhumanist movement is all part of that psychopathic agenda as well. And we have to be very careful of all this technology. They're like these robots and stuff, because eventually an RFID chips, they're just going to switch us off. That's really what they want at the end of the day. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to wipe us out. Did I answer that? Is there anything else I missed there? Did I answer your question?
So I guess that the last piece of that is, do you feel like they're being successful in that?
I used to, but I was until ClimateGate, and I was until global warming, and then 2009 swine flu. The last two big scams were a complete failure for them. The 2009 swine flu pandemic scare completely flopped for them. Almost nobody took those vaccines. That was a complete, with all the media propaganda and all the scares they put out there, that was a complete disaster for them. And that must have really frightened them, because that was a huge wake-up call for them. And prior to that, the failure to get an agreement at the Copenhagen Climate Change Summit, because the third world countries knew the whole thing was a scam from the start. And that was a disaster for them. Fintan Dunn, who's a journalist over here, an alternative journalist, And he made a statement, and the more I think about it, he says the New World Order died that day because they had all their hopes pinned on getting an agreement in Copenhagen, and they didn't get it, and that was the day they lost. And I think that was something we should always bear in mind, that they haven't been as successful as they would like to be. And the climate change thing and the swine flu in 2009, the overwhelming rejection of that, are really positive signs that we should be really, enjoying them for what they are, because that was the flip point. That was when they lost control.
That makes sense to me, because I've been having that feeling, but I hadn't had a concrete thought to attach it to. So I appreciate you pointing those out, because that I agree with you. And then my last question is, do you think that Gaia or the universe is changing the energy of our environment to make it less supportive of psychopaths? It seems that in the past, our energetic environment has been very supportive to psychopaths in a kind of odd way. And do you think that's shifting?
Yes. This zeitgeist that's happening is something to do with that. Definitely. I have no doubt about it. The energy of the planet is changing. Whether it's the sun, whether it's the Earth has moved into a sort of a new kind of energized field within the galaxy. I don't know, but there's definitely some kind of changes. You can see it, like things like this. The solar changes has been quite dramatic. There's something, and there's even an energy level. I don't feel the same person I was a few years ago. I can't explain it, but I've noticed that there's just something. There's almost like we're getting a charge, an extra charge or something. And I think that's definitely what's causing the awakening community thing to happen. I think that's definitely what's causing people to wake up, the psychopaths. Something is being, if you look at the history of the human brain, the prefrontal cortex has expanded 5 times in the last million years. And it's happened, each time the expansion happened, it happened literally overnight in evolutionary terms. And I'm starting to wonder now if we're ready for if this is happening to us again, that the frontal cortex of the human brain is ready for another leap forward. And that's maybe what we are. I'm not trying to be narcissistic or anything here, but it just seems to me that there's been a parting of the waves. I have a video series on my YouTube channel called Our Emerging Mythos, and I talk about it like we've reached a fork in the road where you either choose a zombie or you move on, and that seems to be definitely what's happening. And for psychopaths, for all their talk of being the next evolutionary stage, the irony is that I would reckon that their victims are the ones who are going to get the evolutionary boost.
Wow. Yeah, because I've heard that when you have magnetic pole shifts, you also have evolutions. But I'm just seeing that the bag of tricks that psychopaths have to play just aren't playing as well as they used to.
Oh, it's definitely true. From Main Street to Wall Street, they're not as slick and clever as they used to be. It's absolutely true. We're along. If you look at someone like Edward Bernays in the 1920s, like a supreme psychopath who actually damaged the entire human race with his creation of propaganda and public relations. You don't see many of them today. They just don't have. They just seem to be getting more stupid or something.